Managers, what is the silliest reason you have had an employee call in sick? A friend of mine, when he was in his early 20s, called in drunk. Friend, I can't come in. I'm a pretty drunk boss. Oh, you're sick and can't come in? Friend, nah, I'm just drunk. Can't make it, boss. No, you're sick, right? Friend, nah, man, I'm just kind of drunk, boss. Okay, I'm putting you down as sick. Get better soon. Story 2. They're superstitious and refuse to work on any Friday that falls on the 13th because something bad always happens to them. The same person also once told me he cut his hand on a banana. Story 3. Called in horny. Obligatory, not a manager. He was trying for a baby. Couple was deemed infertile, going through all sorts of treatments and therapies. Dude calls into the manager and says his wife is ready. Manager told him to take the day off. A few months later, they confirmed conception past 12 weeks. It was very exciting, but also strange. Story 4. Not really sick, but I know you're not going to believe this. Some homeless man broke into my house last night and stole all of my pants. I will not be able to make it in today because I have to file a police report and have no pants to wear. Turned out he had gotten drunk and put all of his pants into the recycle for some reason. Story 5. I'm not a manager, but I'm a floor installer, and I run my own crew from time to time. We had this one guy who was constantly complaining about how broke he is and how he needs to work so badly, and yet he just didn't ever want to actually show up. Here's a selection of my favorite of his excuses. 1. There was a construction truck parked blocking his driveway. I thought, why not ask them to move? 2. Someone had allegedly been messing with him and slowly letting the air out of his tires. Clearly, they couldn't possibly be leaking. They were only 5 years old. 3. Someone had broken into his vehicle, under cover of night, removed the motor that operates the windows, and replaced it with a burnt-out one on the driver's side, so now his window barely works. I mean, the car is only about 13 years old. Couldn't be wearing out by itself. We offered this dude a full-time job with a guaranteed permanent position if he proves himself. He proved that he would rather come up with any reason to not work. Story 6. Had a lady call in and say she couldn't come into work because everything was wrong. I asked her to elaborate. She said Venus was retrograde with Mercury, and because she is a Capricorn, she is vulnerable and can't come into work as everything is terrible. I'm like, you are trying to call off work because your horoscope is wrong? She screamed, OMG, I knew you wouldn't understand. You are such an Aries, and slammed the phone on me. She didn't last long. Story 7. This doesn't count because I ended up going in. Not proud of it, but my boss and I got a hearty laugh. I was a landscaper back in my later teens. I'd gotten drunk the night before with my buddies because the forecast said tons of rain in the morning. I get home and pass out and get a phone call in morning from my boss asking where I was. Nearly comatose, I say, it's raining, isn't it? He laughs and says, get to work. I told him my night and my thought process. He laughed even harder. It was a good day with a hangover as well. Story 8. I've got back pain because I fell off the back of a motorcycle. That's fine, mate. Come in when you're... Well, the doctor said it could be the motorcycle. Or it could be my office chair. Okay, well, if we're waiting on the results from the blood test. You're taking a blood test to see if your back pain is from sitting in an old chair or falling off a motorcycle? Yes. He just kept going until it was obvious he was lying. Story 9. Mine is about a girl who called in sick with a cold and sore throat. On their return to work, I asked if it had been started or caused by work, expecting them to say no. Instead, they said yes. Surprised, I asked them to explain. Well, I was making a pot noodle in the kitchen, and the window was open. So as I was opened the sachet of powder, the wind blew through the window, and all the power went down my throat, hence my cold and sore throat. Story 10. Was a nighttime manager for a fast food place. During my first week, I had one of my people that helped close call in 3 times one night to call off. Call number 1, me. Hello? Girl, hey, I can't come in tonight. I don't think I have a ride in. Me. Her sister works the same shift and is able to drive the car and is due to work that night too, so is your sister not coming in either? Girl. Yes, but I can't. Me. Okay, no problem. We'll make it work. Call 2. Literally an hour later. Mio, hello? Girl. Hey, I can't come in tonight. I can't find any pants to wear with my uniform. Starts sobbing loudly into the phone. Me. It's okay, don't worry about it. Girl. Screams at the top of her lungs. I just want to find my pants. Call 3. About 3 hours into shift and her sister's there working. Me. Hello? Girl. Hey, I forgot to call to say I can't make it in. Me. Okay, well, your shift started 3 hours ago, but it's okay, we aren't busy. Girl. I swear I'll make it up to you. Maybe we can go get a drink after you get out tonight. Me. Thinking what the duck is going on here. No, that's okay, just make sure it doesn't become a habit. Girl. It won't. Speaking with the girl's sister, I found out she had gone out with friends and was already at the bar. After we closed, I decided to go to the bar. I know she frequents. As soon as I walk in, she greets me, says she is buying me a beer, and said she was sorry she didn't show up. She was gone. The bartender asked if I was there to pick her up and take her home. because if not, he was going to call someone else to take her. I took her home, and as soon as we pulled in her driveway, she freaks out, gets out of the car, runs up to her front door, and can't get it open. The girl's mom answers the frantic pounding and sees me standing there. The mom, "You have got to be kidding me again?" Apparently, this happened a lot with the last nighttime manager, but they would go back to his place, and he would sleep with her, and in exchange, he would fudge her hours to make it look like she was working. Needless to say, she ended up fired, and the sister left due to going off to college. Story 11. When making her morning coffee, grounds got in her cup and then her creamer was bad. So because her coffee was all wrong, she couldn't come into work that day. Story 12. Obligatory, not a manager, but going to tell on myself for a silly out sick reason. I once had to call out sick because my mother brought home a puppy, set it on my lap where he fell asleep, and then left to go out shopping, and I didn't know when she'd be back. I wasn't really a dog person, and I was the only one home. And this was a brand new animal in the house that I had to keep out of things. So I called in because I had a puppy asleep on my lap. My boss was less than thrilled that that was my reason, but the way I saw it, I had little other choice. The dog didn't have a crate or anywhere I'd feel safe leaving him for 5 minutes, let alone 5 hours. Still kept my job and got to explain the situation better when I went in the next day. Boss was initially angry on the phone, but with more context and a chat with his wife, and he understood a bit better. Bonus icing on the crafty cake to that day, the puppy woke up at some point and started making a low grumbly noise. I didn't know what he was doing, so I brought him over to my bed to pet him and check him over, make sure he was okay. He needed to pee, so he pissed on my bed. Duck's sakes. Story 13. I once called in because I went too hard on leg day, and I never call sick unless if I'm booked off. My boss didn't believe me and told me to come into work, which I did. I was 2 hours late. The boss and the CEO saw me waddling 5 stairs at a time, and both told me to go home. I refused because I already put in all the effort to get there, not going to waste it. Interestingly, I became a manager, and am lucky to not have gotten any silly reasons. Story 14. I work at a small fast food restaurant, and it has very few staff, way too few if you ask me. I cover a lot of shifts for my boss, like sometimes twice a week. I called in sick one day and no one could cover my shift. My boss managed to convince one of my coworkers to cover half of my shift. He then told me I owe him one. Duck off, mate. You owe me way more than I owe you. Story 15. Called in sick. We generally don't ask why for the first 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, we have to involve company doctor. Company doctor reported back. Breast enlargement. We were told by HR not to make a fuzz, even though it was not a good reason to call in sick. There was no previous history. Story 16. Years ago, I was a manager for a security company. All you had to do at that job really was just show up and stay awake. Really easy job and paid okay wage for the area. Well, one of my site locations was 11 a.m., 6 a.m. overnight. You were the only person on a huge amount of land at a local landfill. All you had to do was scan a few checkpoints and watch TV. Easiest job in the world, right? Well, now that you have the backstory, I had a new guy hired about 22 years old was trying to call out on his 3rd day of work, calling me at 10 or so at night, close to start of his shift. My home was about 5 minutes from that location. He said to me, and I will do my best to quote him, "Mike, I can't come in today. I'm sorry, dude. Why can't you come in? I am out of coffee, can't stay up. I will bring you coffee from my home. That's not the brand I need. What is the brand you need? Oh, not from this area. Sorry, Mike." Then proceed to hang the phone. The employee was not fired as company policy. You are given free unpaid sick days with doctor notes or one call out for random reasons a month. I had to get dressed and cover the shift for him. Was not happy. FYI, I had coffee I brought. It was great, Jay. Another time at a store we were in charge of, this was before the one closed in Atlantic City. This was close to 1H 30-minute drive from my home. We had 2 guards hired for that location. One watching the cameras, which was a real police officer who we hire from the city to work in plain clothes who can make arrests. The second was a standard guard at the door. His job was to dress in a nice suit and hold the door for guests and welcome them in. I get a call on a Sunday afternoon close to the holidays, very busy time. The caller was our police officer saying the door guy was not in yet. Annoyed, I call him up. From my best memory, here's the conversation. "Hey, why are you not at work? Is everything okay?" "Oh, Mike wanted to call you. Can't come in today. Sorry." "Okay, sure. I understand. I hope all is well. Can you next time give me some notice, please?" We are unable to ask 100% why they are calling out. "Mike, my girl wanted to go shopping at HM that day and I couldn't work while she was there. Conflict of interest." Then hangs up the phone after saying sorry again. What the duck? Really annoying. Luckily, I had a guy in the area who lived close by. I paid him overtime to cover the shift. He was really grateful. And because of this, I gave him more hours there for the holidays. He ended up working about 60 hours, racked up a lot of for Christmas. Great dude. Story 17. It was me. I phoned work to tell them I wouldn't be in because I'd lock myself in my house. I had just moved house that weekend. Didn't yet have a key for the back door. Locked the front door Sunday evening from the inside and went to bed. Woke up Monday morning, turned the key in the lock, and it just sheared off, leaving the door locked from the inside with remains of the key in the hole. Had to ring up the letting agent and get them to come let me out with their spare key. Was 4 hours late to work. There was much piss-taking when I got to work. Story 18. I used to work at a trampoline park, and we had one guy who was super greedy when taking parties. He called the store one day and would only speak to me since I was his favorite manager. He asked if there were any parties assigned to him, and I said no. He then replied with, "I'm not coming in, I don't feel too good." I told my general manager, and he said bullcrap, and wrote him up for it. Story 19. Not in a managing position, but man, I do love the stuff I hear in the office. During lunch break, there was this overweight lady discussing something with a coworker. I didn't pick up the conversation, but all I heard was, "Your hate and negativity against me are so painful I might throw up." Half an hour later, I hear from her boss that she threw up in the restroom and had to go home since she doesn't feel safe right now. Dude then asked me if I know anything, and I said no, as I didn't want to get involved. He further asks how often I have been sick in the last 3 years. Tell him I have no recorded sick days in the last 3 years, and he just goes, "Wow, that must be hard." I am like, what the heck? Story 20. I had a coworker who had some serious delusions of grandeur, but only when he was calling in sick. His name was Cash Jordan. Not really, but imagine something equally fun to say. He called in because he was expecting a super important call from the President of the United States, Bush at the time. He had to go advise the president on a matter of foreign affairs. He had to personally stop the Italian mafia from coming to the town. He busted up a substances smuggling operation. He claimed he was on his way to work and found out there was an ongoing shootout between the police and a Mexican cartel, so he went there to stop it. When he got out of his car, the cartel leader shouted, "It's Cash Jordan! Everybody stop shooting!" A nuke was accidentally armed, and he had to go input the codes to shut it down because no one else knew them. This apparently made him 14 minutes late for work. He was late because a rabid group of fangirls descended on him, demanding autographs, and he had to escape through a back route. A shipment from China containing poisoned baby formula was coming into town, and he had to go make sure it was destroyed instead of ending up on supermarket shelves. He had to go tail some ambassador to make sure they weren't up to something shady. He had to go sign paperwork involving a border dispute. He had to go take photos with the Queen of England to improve her reputation. Mind you, these are all excuses that he gave to the bosses at a near minimum wage job, while calling in as an excuse for why he was late or not coming in. Eventually, he got canned for too many tardies and absences. I think they only kept him around to see what crazy crap he'd come up with next. Story 21. Some of my favorites when I was a manager. I can't come in today because it's too windy and I can't drive my car. I can't come in today because my cell phone broke and I need to go buy a new one. Calling for my friend's phone. I can't come in because I missed the bus, and being an hour late won't be worth the money I'd make being there on time. I can't come in today because my work pants ripped and I don't have any other pairs. You can just wear normal pants today. No, that wouldn't be professional and fair to you. Story 22. Oh, I just had a good sick versus vacation day lie a few weeks ago. Not necessarily an excuse, but just a straight up lie. I run the rental department for a group of heavy-duty truck dealerships. Box trucks, 18-wheelers, dump trucks, school buses, etc., which means I end up going to the DMV a lot to get tags for new rental trucks, etc. I also have two of my own separate shops from the rest of the dealership to work on my own trucks and my own trucks only. One Monday, I had a young new mechanic call into my shop manager saying he'd caught a stomach bug over the weekend. Wasn't feeling much better yet, hadn't slept, etc. Shop manager tells me he's out. My guys do the best they can while down a mechanic. After lunch that day, I go to DMV to title and register 2 new trucks. Side note, in bigger towns, DMV will occasionally have separate windows for dealers and another for large fleets. Who do I see in the line for the general public registering his new crotch rocket? Guy who called in sick. I just called out his name quietly and waved and told him I was glad he felt better. He used to call out sick every once in a while on a Monday. We usually assumed he was sleeping off a bender. Anyway, he hasn't called in sick on a Monday since then. Story 23. Had an employee call in sick saying it was the flu. An hour later, he checked in at George Webb, Milwaukee restaurant chain, on Facebook and posted a photo of himself standing in a line outside of the restaurant that was 3 or 4 blocks long, waiting for a free hamburger that the restaurant was giving away because the Milwaukee Brewers won 12 games in a row. Story 24. 2 for me as the employee and not the manager. 1, I got bit by my cat and had to go to the ER. I spent all night there. I had to get all sorts of IV antibiotics. I called my boss the next morning saying I couldn't come in for a cat bite. He said, "You are not coming in because a cat bite, whatever." Click. I come in the next day all bandaged up and he is apologizing. His wife is a nurse, and when he got home and told the story, she yelled at him and explained how serious it could be. 2. The day prior. I went tubing down a river and didn't put sunscreen on my legs and I get a bad sunburn. I can hardly stand or walk, it hurts so much. There's only me and another girl who do the job we do. She works AM and I PM. If one calls in sick, they have to work a double. So I call in sick for a sunburn. She is like, whatever, it's kind of BS, but I'll cover for you. I come in the next day in shorts and sandals because I could not have pants touching my legs, totally against dress code. She sees how bad the sunburn is and says, holy crap, I didn't realize how bad it was. Do you want to go home? Story 25. I had someone call off because their electricity was out, and she couldn't blow her hair dry. I told her to drive with her windows down and hung up. Had to fire her a few weeks later as she got arrested for beating up the new girlfriend of one of her baby daddies. Story 26. I'm a manager, but my own boss calls in sick so frequently that we don't even ask why anymore. Oh, Devin is sick? Shocker. In the last 2 months, he's had the chicken pox and like 3 colds. The kicker is that when I try to call out, happened once, I had a bad fever, he guilts me into working. He does the same to my employees. I also have an employee who goes home early all the time, once a week or so, because her daughter starts fights at school. So either she's lying or her daughter's a very violent 4-year-old and someone should be concerned. Story 27. My 4-year-old daughter came out into the yard to watch me install a chain link fence. It involved digging lots of post holes in the hardest stone, red clay, in Alabama in August. It was hot. She sat on a block of concrete and just watched as the sweat beaded up on her brow. I wondered why she didn't at least move over to the shade or maybe sit inside in the AC and watch through a window. Eventually, I asked her what she was doing. Supervising. Do you know what supervising means? She sighs. Mostly, it means being very, very patient. Story 28. My old office liked to do weird things as team building, one of which was a maple syrup drinking competition. Apropos of nothing, do not participate in a maple syrup drinking competition. It is a bad idea. Anyway, my office did it. Not my call. I was middle management and I let the higher-ups know this was dumb and dangerous. One of my best employees, who was also a bit of a goof, decided to participate. He won by drinking an entire bottle of Vermont 100% maple syrup. This was the good stuff. About 10 minutes later, when his jubilation had died down, he started feeling not so well. We gave him the rest of the day off. The next morning, I got an email that was titled, "Not coming to work today." And inside the email, it contained an MS Paint stick figure drawing of a guy kneeling down with brown and pink stuff coming out of his mouth into what was supposed to be a toilet, but actually looked more like a crumpled white top hat. Look, an attempt was made. In addition to the crude art, there were arrows and helpful captions such as, "The pink is Pepto-Bismol," and "Going out of mouth." My favorite one was "Pain," and it had like 12 arrows just pointing all over his body. Ducking, brilliant. Anyway, he ended up having to go to the hospital to get saline and check to make sure he didn't have a heart attack from all that sugar in his system. And he missed 3 days of work, all because the top brass thought this would be a fun way to foster team cohesion. Story 29. I have 2 great ones from when I used to be a GM at a restaurant. They aren't technically call-ins, but still pretty fitting. First one didn't show and we couldn't get a hold of her. She finally calls 2 hours later and says she's sort of had a mental snap. Yes, she literally said she had mentally snapped, took her 2 kids and left town. She was 4 hours away when she called. And when I said, took her kids, I mean it literally. She didn't have full custody. She was lucky the dad was a deadbeat and didn't care otherwise. She could have been charged. Told us she didn't know if she was ever coming back. So obviously was fired. We considered it a no call, no show. Came back to town 3 weeks later and was shocked she no longer had a job. Claimed we had no right to fire and threatened to call the labor board. Second one was a girl who didn't show up and we couldn't get a hold of her. Anyone who's worked in a restaurant knows this is annoyingly common, so we just basically washed our hands of her. She came in 2 days later apologizing and begging, saying she really needs this job. Asked her why she hadn't shown up. She had a kid, so she might have had a good reason to be not come in, or at least could have come up with a good lie. Tells me that she was totally wasted and did a duck ton of CK during a 2-day bender. She even reeked of alcohol. So as politely as I could, I told her she was already replaced. Story 30. One of my employees was arrested for substances dealing, and I got another employee to cover his shift. The covering employee never showed up, never replied to calls or texts. I was worried enough that I had HR do a wellness check with their family. Turns out, she had car trouble that morning, well before her shift, which was also resolved well before her shift. But she was so angry over it, she just decided she couldn't work and didn't want to talk to anyone, so she just didn't answer her phone. I fired both employees. It was a rough week. Story 31. Former retail manager. Black Friday. Had a 20-year-old college student working for me. 1 hour before his shift, on the busiest day of the year, pretty much one of the days he was hired to work, and calls in and says, "My grandma came over and wants to take me out to buy my Christmas gifts. I'm not going to be able to make it in." So I just told him I wouldn't be needing him anymore. His Karen mother calls me to Karen about her baby losing his job because it was not his fault, and he didn't know to request this day off. I told her I could not discuss private matters like this and hung up. Then, Grandma Karen calls to tell me I'm a horrible person and she's coming to the mall shopping and is going to give me a piece of her mind in person. She then proceeds to tell me her grandson wanted most of his Christmas gifts from my store. That's right, he called off to come and shop at the store where he called off, and that she expects his discount to be applied to her purchase. I informed her that only active employees receive discounts and stressed that any disturbance would respect and security police being called. I never saw her, but I did get a call from one of our locations in another mall doing a discount check call for this guy. Of course, I shut it down. Story 32. When I worked in a restaurant, we had this 16, 17-year-old food runner who used to shift Dodge a lot. Always a wedding, a christening, ill a couple times a month, that sort of thing. She used to get her mom to call us for her too, and it was always a Saturday night or a Sunday lunchtime when she'd do this. Anyway, on a really busy day, think it might have been Father's Day, can't remember. Her mom calls and says she was on her way to work when she was hit by a car. Obviously believable for anyone else, but for her it was like, come on, this is the third shift this week. Something's come up literally 15 minutes before you're due to work. I remember my boss saying something along the lines of, if she gets too anxious to work the big shifts, we'll probably have to find someone else, etc. Then she sends us a bunch of pics of her completely laid out at the hospital. Came back a couple months later, still making BS excuses, only this time management couldn't call her out because the one time they expressed their doubt, she really had got ducked up on the way to work. Story 33. A girl called in once because she had gotten back from vacation on Saturday and she needed another day to recover and it was Monday. She was PRN and made her own schedule. She would also ask if she could come in a couple hours late. She worked as a tech in a hospital, so she would relieve someone else. Story 34. Had a coworker who called in because his apartment building caught fire. He had been sleeping, so he didn't have any work clothes. We were all very skeptical. He was a nice guy, but a huge flake. Until he told us that the local news was interviewing him about it. We turned on the news, there he is, covered in soot and wearing pajamas, explaining how he had jumped out of his second-story bedroom window. Same guy later dropped off the face of the planet. Management asked me to text him since I had his cell phone number. He responds 2 days later saying that he had a flare-up of his autoimmune disorder and was in the hospital. The text was kind of cut off, like he sent it before he meant to, and then there was complete radio silence for 3 weeks. We assumed that he quit. Then he texted me again, explaining that he had been in a medically induced coma because the hospital pushed his IV fluids too hard and overloaded his heart. His pericardium, the sac around the heart, had swollen up, but now he was feeling better and was hoping to get back to work soon. For 2 years, we referred to that period of time as the year the universe tried to lost Mike. Story 35. He wanted to take paid leave for a Friday. I knew his favorite band was in town that Friday, and their concert would start right around the time work was set to get out. Instead, I put him on 24-hour sick time, basically paid time off, and the company only starts tracking it if it exceeds 24 hours, and told him to enjoy the concert. Story 36. I once had an intern text me at 9 p.m. on Thursday to tell me that they're sick and couldn't make it in on Friday. I knew she was going out that night and getting drunk off her rocker because I overheard a conversation she had. I told her that just as a heads up, it's usually best to call in sick the morning of and not preemptively. Story 37. I used the food poisoning call in reason. Real reason was I had an interview at a different company. What I didn't know was 3 other coworkers had interviews at different companies on the same day. 2 of them also had food poisoning, and one was my kid got sick. Quite hilarious the next day when our boss asked what or where we ate. All named 3 different foods, 3 different places. I'm sure he knew something was up as he just laughed at us. Story 38. I'm not a manager, but I did once have a weird reason for calling off. My car died right as I was pulling into my garage. My neighbor had to help me push it in the rest of the way. My girlfriend lent me her car to take to work. I drove down to the corner station to top off the tank. Her car died at the gas station. This was at about 9 p.m. on a Saturday. No rental place was open. No one I could call for a ride or borrow another car. Had to call off because I had no way of getting there. People thought I was calling off to get a 3-day weekend. Story 39. A girl who had worked at my store a few years ago returned when we needed new cashiers. After just a handful of weeks working with us, doing a great job and being very friendly, I might add, she started calling in last week saying she couldn't get to work because her car was broken down and wouldn't be fixed until, conveniently, the hour after her shift would have ended. She did this for 2 shifts in a row. For the 3rd attempt, the store manager offered to drive the girl to work. The store manager rarely gets days off and often has to come in and pick up everybody's slack, and she was offering to go out of her way to drive this girl to work. Of course, the girl never responded to that offer, and we haven't heard from her now, a week later. Story 40. I'm not a manager, but a lot of weird stuff happens in my life. I'm not required to tell my employer why I'm calling out of work, will be late, but I usually do tell them because it helps them to gauge the length of time I'll be out. Over the years, my completely true reasons have been a hay truck caught fire and the flames were blocking the entirety of the main road. I was half an hour late because I didn't know the town well, and my GPS kept giving me bad directions. Part of my roof fell off after a snowstorm and I had to talk to the apt managers and make sure everything was okay before I could go to work. Actual food poisoning. The battery in my key fob had died and I couldn't start my car without it, so I had to wait for a friend to get out of work and take me to a store so I could get a replacement battery. A truck rolled on the highway and dumped hazardous chemicals everywhere. My cat had explosive diarrhea and needed a bath. Story 41. I am not manager, but have heard lots of excuses that have made me and coworkers and boss laugh quite often, or some are just super messed up in general. But this one, so far, has really taken the cake. We have a really religious cook that works with us. Not judging that part, but it's the relevant reason. One day, she found out that one of the other cooks is atheist and called out the next day, saying she refuses to come back in because that cook is broken and needs to be fixed. Until she's pinned, she wants a vacation pay. She's still not back, but calls every day to ask if she's fixed yet. Story 42. Not a manager, but the employee asking for PTO. I once asked my boss if I can take 2 days off to go to Area 51 on September 20th, 2019. He actually laughed out loud because I didn't sugarcoat it with made-up family stuff. I felt like he appreciated it. Story 43. Had a guy who lived within eyeshot of the business. You could look out the front door and see his house. He called in because his car wasn't working. At first, we assumed that he was stuck somewhere with a broken car, but a few minutes later, another employee pointed out that he was currently out front working on it. Still don't know if he just genuinely did not want to walk to work or he thought that a 3-minute walk was too far on foot. Story 44. I'm an alcoholic who used lots of excuses to get out of working weekends. I told my boss my grandfather passed away and I needed to travel for the funeral. A week later, I said my grandmother died, using the broken heart death excuse, and needed to go back. No one really said anything because it does occasionally happen and it's tough to call someone a liar on that. My grandfather had been dead for years, and my grandmother is still alive and kicking 10 years later. I still feel bad for that one. Same job, golf course. I was driving a golf cart with my foot stupidly hanging off and I squished my ankle between the cart and a cement pole. The next day, I literally couldn't walk on it. So I called in. That one was true but stupidly self-inflicted. Story 45. Not a manager, but had a new job with a very strong learning curve. But senior staff wants to develop me, so I'm very lucky as a young person. Within the first month, I had a bit of a breakdown, despite being fine and meeting expectations, and took 4 days off to recover and process. My boss told me I had strep. I did not. Come in at the end of the week, and she says policy says doctor's note after 3 days. Whoops. And that is how my boss leaned of my mental health struggles and encouraged me to get support. I did and am doing much better now. But it was dumb. I just realized I didn't say this, and I feel that it needs to be here. I am incredibly lucky to have such an understanding boss. Many people don't, and I wish everyone could have a manager that puts their money where their mouth is and supports them. Story 46. I called out one day to my crafty job at a call center because my sandal broke while I was walking there. I can't walk the rest of the way barefoot. I didn't give a crap about that job, and the day I finally quit, I just walked out in the middle of my shift. Also at a different job, I gave my friend a good reference, and she ended up getting hired. Well, that was a huge mistake because she was a terrible employee and called out all the time. One day, she called in saying she couldn't come in because she had gone to the cabin for the weekend and decided to stay longer. She got fired after like 2 months. Story 47. I used to manage a small office of about 7 people 15 years ago. Here are a few excuses that stood out to the point that I still remember them. One employee called in sick stating that she had a 110-degree fever. I checked online. The highest fever that anyone has ever survived was like 107 or 108. So she was full of crap. Another employee called out sick because his large dog brushed up against his leg and hurt his knee, and that he couldn't walk. And the best one, I think I have ever heard. A guy called out sick for 3 days because he sneezed so hard that he dislocated his shoulder. He came into work after 3 days with his arm in a sling, told everyone he would need it for 3 weeks, came to work without it the next day and never wore it again. Story 48. We don't require a reason for people to call in. We don't have sick days per se. Just an absence policy that tracks truancy and eventually results in termination. If they bring in a doctor's note the next day, they don't get dinged for the absence. No problem. When people call in, I want their name, their employee number, and the shift they'll be missing. This is Jean Valjean. I'm going to miss my 4 p.m. shift today, Monday the 28th. What I get instead is a voicemail that's either, I am not going to make it in, bruh, or, hey, is this the office? I work there. But this big incomprehensible came right at gibberish then on Thursday, so I don't want to let you guys down, but psh, thanks. Story 49. Not a manager, but I worked for a company that had a manger call in sick because she needed to run errands, but the stores would be too busy to do so after her shift that day. The kicker is that whenever any of us would call in sick, she would always haggle and try to get us to come in for just 2 hours or just half a shift. This included a girl whose knee was gashed open and bleeding from a car accident, a girl with severe whooping cough who was in constant close contact with customers for her entire shift and ordered by her to not work, and a girl calling in about a close friend's died that had been made public that morning. She lost almost all respect once the rest of us overheard her telling another manager the following shift. Story 50. I used to manage a large used car dealership, biggest chain corporation in use. One of my top sales associates was a kid of 21. He would always come in late or call out. I asked him one day why he was always late. He said he has a hard time waking up because he goes to school work. He is tired and the speakers on his cracked phone didn't work. So I took him across the street and bought him an alarm clock. He was really grateful, set it up right away, and promised he would never be late again. The next day he was late again. I called him into my office and asked him, "What the heck?" He told me he didn't hear it. Long story short, I investigated further, talked to some of his friends. Turns out he parties really hard at night and does a ton of substances. Story 51. I had a subordinate once call in sick because he accidentally closed his recliner on his cat and apparently hit tail. The next evening, I asked him what his cat's name was, and he couldn't answer. Story 52. Once, my wife, who was an RN, called me midday while I was at work. She told me she was home and claimed she had called in sick to work because there was a large, scary bug by the door. We lived in an apartment with only the one door. When I asked if it was still there, she said it was. I told her to sick our Jack Russell Terrier on it. She would undoubtedly kill it. So that's what my wife did. When she took the dog over and pointed out the bug, the dog casually walked over, sniffed it, and walked away, which prompted my wife to take a closer look at the bug, at which point she discovered it was just a ball of black thread. Story 53. We had an 18-year-old working with us, just doing odd data input stuff. He was the manager's son and pretty lazy. One day he called in sick because he was too tired. The reason he was too tired was because he'd watched a scary movie the night before and couldn't get to sleep. Luckily, his dad wasn't up for his BS, and he was fired. Story 54. I once emailed my boss drunk the day before my shift because the night was about to get real. Was in Montreal, and I think in second or third year university. School was an hour outside of Toronto. Boss's name was Dominic. He was ex-US Navy. Email said this: "Hey Big D, I'm in Montreal and going to be way too drunk to drive back to Toronto. I'm going to go keep drinking throughout the night and don't anticipate my situation changing for the better in the next 12-18 hours. It's American spring break here, and the whole city is filled with 19-year-old girls who don't know how to handle their alcohol. See you Tuesday? Matt." Story 55. Not call in sick, but I once had a girl show up 2 hours late because her tire pressure indicator turned on, and instead of going to a gas station, she went to a dealership where she had to wait for somebody to put air in the tires. Story 56. I called in sick, late because my flying squirrels got loose. My boss was like, "What the heck? You're full of crap." I was like, "No, I really do have 2 flying squirrels and I must have not closed their cage right when I fed them last night because it's open now." He said, "Fine, but I expect you to bring them in with you today after you find them." I think he thought he was going to prove I was lying this way. An hour later, I showed up with them in my travel cage that I use for vet visits. It was a fun day at work. They were jumping all around and gliding. Boss thought they were awesome. Story 57. I saw one in my LinkedIn feed where a guy canceled all his meetings for a day because he'd had a dream that there would be a car crash on the motorway that day. Imagine getting that call. "So you're not coming in because there's been a crash? Where? Was anyone hurt? What did you mean there's not actually been one? A dream." Story 58. Oh man. There was this kid the last GM had hired. He was only about 17 and had an extensive gang history, but always talked about wanting a better life. He was also just dumb as rocks. He constantly tried to call out when he was hungover or some random thing made him not want to come in. But the best, by far, was when he texted me that it had been raining and there was a huge puddle outside his house that he couldn't get by. I informed him that was not an acceptable reason to miss a shift, and he texted that he would get so wet if he tried to get past the puddle that he'd be too wet to work. Story 59. Technically, you can't ask for a reason for sick. As sick is sick, and they don't get to know your medical info. So if you all are volunteering reasons for sick, that's kind of bananas, and not the kind that cut you. That doesn't mean you won't get fired. It just means you don't have to volunteer sick info unless it is relevant to your work situation, like you are a carrier of a deadly virus that spreads through paperwork or something. Story 60. Here are a few gems from my workplace. I literally keep a Word document on my work computer to keep track of these. Had to leave early because too much cheese. Had to leave early because his pants were too tight, same guy. Had to leave early because he burned his mouth on a cheeseburger during his lunch break, different guy. Called in because there were ducks on his pond. Called in because his dog had bloodshot eyes. Called in because there was poop in his toilet, and my personal favorite, guy couldn't come in because his girlfriend attempted to shoot the fleas off their cat with a 9mm pistol. Story 61. Not calling out sick, but at one company I worked at, they decided to give us 3 extra paid days off for religious holidays. I am an atheist, so I used 2 of mine for the first 2 days of the men's basketball tournament. Everyone I worked with had a laugh. College basketball is your religion? I won the office pool that year too. Story 62. I had someone who said, I'm not coming in today, because reasons. HR had a long talk with them for that. To clarify, the person never gave a reason, medical or otherwise. They said, because reasons, which I'm sure annoyed management that they used internet slang to call into work. They were very stuffy. Story 63. I'm usually impressed if they bother to make up an excuse, but I've heard a lot of git crap. Best was from a cook who got saved one Sunday and told me he was waiting to hear from his new preacher if it was okay to work at a bar. He threatened to sue me for religious discrimination when I told him not to bother. Story 64. I called in sick because my car wouldn't start. Planned on waiting, but they never made it out to me. They had over 350 calls that morning in our county because it was 35. Story 65. He called in Friday for his Monday shift because he was blind. Had to wait out the weekend to go to a specialist. Doctors gave him 3 weeks off, even though they didn't find anything wrong after scans. He claimed he could barely see. 2 weeks in, he walks in for his paycheck. Oh, you can see now. How are you able to see the door and see me and drive here? Story 66. One time an employee called me to tell me he wouldn't be able to make it into work because when he was sitting on the toilet taking a crap, a mirror that was hanging behind him fell off the wall and onto him. He claimed the mirror shattered and hit his lower back. I didn't even know what to say. I just accepted the fact that he wasn't going to be there that day. Story 67. Recently, I've had a few different staff members not show up, and when asked about it in an attendance management meeting, they've claimed, I'm a gamer, so I stay up late and then forgot to get up for work. I'm sitting there thinking, what the heck? I game, but don't miss work. Apparently, they're going to be the next ninja or some crap. What's worse is we are so understaffed that these folks don't lose their jobs over it. Just a slap on the wrist and told to be better. Story 68. She spilled an iced coffee on herself while getting out of the car and told me that she couldn't come in. I told her to go home and change. She only lived a few minutes away from the store. It took her almost an hour to come back, and she had a new iced coffee with her. I made her throw it out, one of the only times I ever enforced the no drinks at the register corporate policy. If you've got the gall to show up an hour late with a new coffee, that thing is going right into the trash can. Story 69. Not a manager, but a coworker once called out with the following excuses. He claimed he had gastrointestinal fever. He claimed a kidney stone ricocheted off his spleen. He claimed his car would only ever start on the 3rd try. Story 70. I used to manage a popular pizza chain. Had a delivery driver call out because his tire came flying off his car while driving down the road. Before I could ask him about the tire, he mentioned that he went after it, but the tire rolled into a river. Dude would always miss work, but this was the golden excuse. Story 71. Couldn't make it to her 4 a.m., 8 a.m. shift because of church. Similarly, couldn't make it to her 12 a.m., 4 a.m. shift because her family was in town. These were 2 separate women. Story 72. Not a manager, but I'm close with mine. He pulls me into his office to see what another salesman sent him as justification for calling out. This is somewhat verbatim. I am unable to come into work today. I lost about 2/3 of my voice, and if I were to come in, I would certainly lose the other 1/3. I'm looking to regain the other 2/3 of my voice so I can return to work the next day, or at least another 1/3. We laughed our ass off and just simultaneously went, this duckin' guy. Story 73. I had somebody call up because they had a rash and was sure it was smallpox, so they were going to go to the doctor to see if they could get some cream to put on it. Story 74. His computer wasn't working. He told me this over a video chat using software only installed on his non-working computer. I said, sorry to hear, but what computer? This one is fine, and waited, smiling silently as he went beet red and played it off as, I was sleep deprived and must have tried using an old laptop, haha gee. It's like losing your glasses on your head. Yes, hilarious. Story 75. My first summer job, there was one guy who would call in sick constantly, to the point that if someone else in the plant needed something from him, they'd just call his favorite pub and ask them to hand the phone over to Bob. Hey, I know you're sick at home, but I can't find the... Story 76. Not a manager, but one time getting ready for work before my coffee, I took one of my dad's Xanax bars instead of my Adderall. It was very early and I wasn't even close to awake. And that was one of the more awkward experiences I've had on the phone with a manager. He appreciated my honesty when he heard my voice start to slow down mid-conversation. Story 77. Former manager. A guy called in and said that he already had started his laundry process and forgot that he needed to be at work. He wondered if it could be considered a sick day. Story 78. Friend of mine used to use the old "my nan granddad passed away" trick. He ran out of grandparents to lie about fairly quickly. But the whole while, he'd been dropping hints as to his huge, polished Catholic family, so it wasn't long before he could start using great uncles and aunts. It was hilarious watching him make up dead people for every hangover. Story 79. My cat is missing and I wouldn't be concentrate on what I was doing. Someone burgled us in the night and took my work boots. I'm snowed in. I told him I'd drive past where he lives, and he wasn't snowed in. Someone threw a firework at my window, and now I have to wait for the landlord. I haven't got any money to get to work. It was a Friday, and they were paid weekly. Story 80. I don't know if this is more silly or just ridiculous, but we had an employee called in about 2 hours before their shift to say, "I forgot to take the day off. I won't be coming in because I'm getting married today." I don't think we ever saw her again. That was years ago, and we all still have a good laugh about it. Story 81. This makes me so happy. My first job was at a place where my father was my boss's boss. He ensured that all policies were followed with me to the letter, and when I get fired, only time I have been, he reviewed my unfair dismissal case and threw it out with HR's help. Story 82. I had a driver once get pulled over and arrested for possession while en route to the house. The cops actually called us and said we needed to come get the pizza and have someone else deliver it because she was being hauled off to jail. A few hours later, she used her phone call to ask if she still had a job once she got out. That's a no. Story 83. I'm pretty relaxed with my team. My golden rule is just don't take the piss. I got in recently to find a post-it on my desk saying, "Not in today," in my colleague's easily recognizable scrawl and thought, "Welp, I guess he's not in today. No big deal." Story 84. I ate some mushrooms and my manager tried to call me in. I told him I ate some mushrooms and he told me to come in anyways. It was just a Sunday. Only the two of us knew. Shift went fairly fine, except a handful of very odd statements I made to some guests. We had a laugh about it for a couple years after. Story 85. Had an employee show up 2 hours late claiming that they could not get their pants on by themselves and had to wait for help. She said her hand hurt but was able to work the rest of the day just fine. We are hairstylists and I've had carpal tunnel surgery so I can understand that, but it was an obvious lie. Story 86. I can't come in today, daughter's name. Got a rock stuck in her nose, so we're headed to the urgent care. Totally plausible, but totally thought it was bullcrap. Cut to the next day when I see the video of them getting the rock out by plugging her other nostril and blowing it out. Story 87. Once had a coworker say she had forgotten she had a court date that would have her unable to work for the entire day. She was calling out for a Sunday. Story 88. The water went out for maintenance and for a couple of hours at our workplace. The next day they called in sick because the 3 600 ml bottles of water they were provided for the time period wasn't enough, and now meant that they were too dehydrated to come to work 18 hours later. Story 89. Used to be in the military serving national service. One of my army drivers called in a few times regarding family deaths. First 2 deaths, uncle and niece, we empathize. The third, his aunt and grandma. We decided to give him a surprise visit. Guess who opens the door when we press the bell? Dead grandma. Story 90. I took the call from my coworker who always had ridiculous excuses for being out sick. This time she claimed that she was really cold and was afraid that she'd catch a fever. It took me a minute then to convey the message to her boss when he got in because I couldn't stop laughing. What thing does your coworkers do that pisses you off? Story 1. Schedule meetings with no clear agenda. Meeting begins, "So what do we need to talk about?" I don't know, mother ducker. You were the one who called this meeting. Story 2. I sit near personal call lady. It's not so much that she is on the phone that bothers me, but the degree to which she repeats herself while talking to her sister or whoever the duck it is. Wait, what? She did what? No way. Get out. No way. No way. Get out. She did not. Unbelievable. 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 No way. What a shame. Shame. Such a shame. What a shame. I know. Right. I know. Shame. She did not. Get out. No way. I know. Yep. No way. I know. Yep. Unreal. Okay, well, I'm super busy, so I should probably go. Okay, all right. No way. Okay, yep, all right. Okay, bye. Just kill me now. Story 3. This older woman sits beside me, and all day she sips on the same XL Tim Hortons tea. But she sips super loud, then smacks her lips and sighs. It's constant. Story 4. Staples. Ducking staples everything. Single pages, 2 pages that have no relation to each other, a staple just for fun into the side of a cardboard box. Staples everywhere. And here is where the problem lies. Half of our paperwork signed proof of delivery forms, must be scanned for backup and sent elsewhere. The scanner is the only thing on this whole ducking planet which has a greater distaste for staples than I do. It doesn't matter if I take them out, the location of the offending staple does not matter. Whether it be a staple or the 2 tiny holes left by a staple, any ducking staple, the documents will jam the scanner. The reset process for a paper feed jam on our scanner is a 4-step process that makes me taste blood. I've hidden the staplers, burned them, stolen them, wrapped them in a million layers of tape, and thrown them into passing truck beds, and yet every single ducking day staples. This man will not be re-educated. He will not convert to the humble, reusable paperclip. He cannot be stopped. One of us must die. I am happy to report that Reddit Gold has ended the crisis in our billing process. 1,300 and counting random internet strangers have come, united in common bond, and have inspired my coworker to end staple use on all billing paperwork for the remainder of his natural life, however short. Story 5 turns the heat up as far as it goes. Years of me coming into the office and being greeted by a humid cloud of what the hell. Before I can get to the thermostat, my eyes are sweating. I finally approach the woman with a what the hell is wrong with you in the heat? Are you a lizard? She still does it. Story 6. I'm a fresh CPA and I work at a firm where I share an office with a seasoned CPA on the verge of retiring. The guy is really nice, I want to make that clear. But every time he leaves before I do, he says, "Good night, see you in the morning," and then turns off the lights and walks out. He is not doing it maliciously. He is just old, I guess. But I am too shy to be like, "Hey man, I'm still in here." So I just get up and turn them back on every time. I haven't said anything because I don't want him to feel bad about it, but goddamn, you just said bye to me. You know I'm here. Story 7. Talk down to me. We're the same age and she's not the manager or anything, but sometimes she'll talk to me the way a rich person would talk to a servant, and then has the nerve to get mad when I tell her no or I don't answer how she wants. Story 8. I wish my coworkers would leave food in the HLZ until everything was ready to go. The HLZ is the hot landing zone, and it keeps your food heated before it gets put on your unheated tray. Say you bought 3 sandwiches and 2 orders of fries. The first sandwich will come up in the HLZ, and my coworkers will immediately put it on your tray before any of your other food is ready. This drives me insane because while your other food is being made, that one sandwich on the tray is getting cold. If you leave it in the HLZ till everything is ready, it will all be hot when the customer gets it and everyone can be happy. It's a small thing, but it really does piss me off because everybody does it and it's common sense. Also, in drive-thru, if I'm busy getting a shake or filling a tea and someone brings out an order to the presenting window, that they'll just leave it there instead of handing it out to the customer. Policy says if the presenter is busy, the person with the order needs to hand the food out so the customer isn't just sitting there staring at their order. But everybody ignores the goddamn policy. Ugh, this is probably just stuff only other fast food workers can relate to, and I'm basically just venting at this point. Sorry. Story 9. We have a new guy on a term position that complains to HR about everything. Last week, he filed a complaint that one of our workers said the word crap. It offended him that that language was used so freely, as he said. The employee who said it had just dropped all their papers and there were no clients present. Big ducking deal. He also complained that in a private conversation one of us was having, I made a Jew joke. It was in regards to a joke my own father made about himself for actually being Jewish. All his whining has basically cost him a permanent position with our company. So good job, bud. Story 10. We have a new sales guy. He's very flamboyant and will not stop hugging me. Just to clarify, I don't even know his name and we don't really work together. He just comes over to go over stuff with my deskmate and feels it necessary to hug us both and kiss us on the cheek. Again, I don't even know his name. This is driving me insane. Story 11. Oh, duck yes, prepare to meet M. 2 weeks ago, I was moved from a desk in a private office out into a large room that M had filled with 3 desks covered with her crap. I knew who M was, but never had a lot of interaction. As I was turning one of the desks with help from the intern, and as our bosses watched, M went full crazy and repeated that she didn't like this, and that this is why she was happy she was an only child. I don't know why she kept repeating that. She was happy she was an only child, so I joked, I bet your parents were happy you were an only child too. To which she replied, that's very hurtful. My parents had trouble getting pregnant. Why would you joke about something you didn't want people to mention? M is morbidly obese and enjoys giving me weight loss tips despite me never mentioning I wanted to lose weight. M also has the worst smelling feet. M has worn the same sweatshirt with a cat on it 8 out the last 10 days of work. M will frequently call me out in front of our bosses for looking at Reddit instead of working. But Karen, I see you on Facebook all damn day. M likes to brag about how late she stays at work and that she has never taken a sick day. Nobody has ever asked her to stay late. M makes outrageous claims that can never be confirmed or denied. M's parents at various times have won the lottery, worked for Obama, escape the Holocaust, as children, I guess, or they'd be ancient, own an island in Southern Carolina. M herself has beefs with several celebrities. Lena Dunham better watch out because she once snapped her fingers and told M to get her a coffee, which, if true, makes me want to give Lena Dunham a ducking medal. Bieber better watch out too, because M hates him too for some personal reason. M also has celebrity friends. She knew Justin Timberlake since his NSYNC days, and her and Taylor Swift still chat on the phone. Never any pictures or anything to prove this, M, you goddamn liar. M is from Washington, D.C. or New York or London, depending on her mood, but it's okay because her family still owns houses in each city. M was offered several high-paying jobs here in our city, but she took this lower-paying one because M has many male suitors, but her main squeeze is the son of a Mexican politician, and he's very busy, so he can't come to work functions. In fact, he's very busy not existing, M. She once picked him up from the airport wearing nothing but lingerie under a trench coat. How did you get into our very busy airport in that? Did you pay for parking and walk to his terminal and wait at baggage claim in your underwear? M loves the zombie apocalypse, but all her plans are in disarray because now she's on the West Coast. M's current plan is to steal a boat and sail herself. Did I forget that everyone in M's family are expert sailors and been in regattas? To the East Coast through the Panama Canal. When I postulated the canal be closed due to ducking zombies, M rebutted she'd take the Cape of Good Hope, which would be pretty ducking far out of your way, M, being in ducking Africa. M also cares about feminism insofar as she has been fired from jobs for being a feminist and not for being ducking awful to be around. M regularly tries to get me to pay for her lunch when we send out the intern. The intern is a woman, and M is furious she is not a feminist. The intern is also skinny, which lead M to believe she has an eating disorder. M and I are in completely different departments, but believes I'm trying to steal her job. M has threatened to sue me and the company for misogyny. I think that was right after she told me the lingerie airport story. When I told M what my favorite type of dog was. Her family suddenly had 4 of those, but she has a new phone with no pictures. M is very scarred about what will happen if Trump is elected, but is unregistered to vote in our state. M has a plan to move to Ireland if he is elected and invited me, which is nice in a sort of I'd rather die way. M is highly evolved. She was born without wisdom teeth. M has read to me her shopping list and asked if she needed anything else. Then she did it again in case I missed anything. God damn. Story 12. Getting smoke breaks. These usually last about 30 minutes, 2 to 3 times a day. Yet if I left my desk for 30 minutes at a clip for 2-3 times a day to run errands or doing something productive, I'd be fired. Story 13. I work in a small office with 3 women over 55, all trying to lose weight, and they talk about it constantly. Where's your Fitbit today? I want the new one. What's that you're eating? Oh, I just can't do kale. I'm not to 10K steps today. I should do a little dancing at my desk. What was for dinner last night? I can't be bothered to count calories. I count every calorie. Damn it, Diane. You can't possibly love salads and going for walks as much as you say you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be 300 thumbs and need a walker. If you like walking so much, walk to the printer your damn self. Story 14. I worked in a restaurant for 5 years. I remember there was this girl who got hired and started announcing that she was 2 months pregnant. She kept it a secret during the interview and didn't tell anyone until she knew she was hired. Oh, and she was a server. So for the next 6 months, she would walk around collecting tips from her tables, and that was about it. She would ask other people to drop off her food at her tables, along with drinks and appetizers. She always complained of being too tired, or her back hurt from the pregnancy. She was in the break room half the shift, resting her feet. I would hate taking a large party with her because it pretty much meant I had to do everything and then split the tip with her. Never did anything to help anyone else. People think I'm mad because she was pregnant. No, I'm mad because she took advantage of the situation while lying and made everyone else work for her. I've seen some pregnant women at work, working their asses off, and I have so much respect for those women. Story 15. Uses speakerphone all the time. Doesn't bother me that she takes personal calls, but I wish she would step away and keep it private. Instead, she stays at her desk and uses speakerphone on her cell. Story 16. Parties. One of the ladies in my office is super into this crap. She works for one that sells jewelry and also frequently hosts others for stuff like Mary Kay. Her newest fascination is essential oils, combining crap with actual medical snake oil. Story 17. Talks all the time. He will talk about anything. Guns, women, rowing machines, or really anything that is relevant to what he did last night, including what adult films he watched. First off, I don't want to hear any of that. Second off, I just want to play Clash of Clans, but I can't because you are peering in my cubicle going on about your nonsense, so I have to appear to look busy. Story 18. I work in a small office with 5 people. The air gets really bad and it also gets really hot. They won't allow me to open the window for a short while to let fresh and cold air inside. After 8 hours, it becomes a sauna inside and you can barely breathe. Story 9. I work at a tiny software company that's basically a scam. We sell programs to make astrology charts with the promise that you can make a living selling these charts to your own clients. And our level of technology is straight out of the late 90s/early 2000s. Anyway, there's only 4 employees that work there, and our boss is the owner of the company's wife, an older lady from Taiwan who doesn't speak English very well or know much about how computers work at all. She makes ridiculous rules for us, like when we clock in, we must stop by everyone's office to individually say hello and good morning to them and announcing who we are when we enter the building, because these are the right thing to do. But what really gets on my nerves is when she tries explaining something she wants me to do differently, usually something completely inconsequential too, and just keeps repeating herself and going on tangents, and then gets annoyed with me when I can't figure out what the hell she's trying to tell me. Oh, and sometimes she'll come sit behind me and eat loudly while watching me work, so that's lovely. She's a nice enough lady, but sure does get on my nerves throughout the week. Story 20. General coworker crap that pisses me off. 1. Being passive-aggressive, asking rhetorical questions, repeatedly needing to be taught the same thing. 4. Micromanaging on projects when working as equals. Story 21. Have coworkers that are always talking about how poor they are and how stressful their lives are. I know how much you make. You're not poor. You just make bad life choices, constantly one-upping on bad things. I could say my dog died and she would chime in saying that her dog died eating her pet squirrel that was hit by a falling turtle that happened to be her lost first pet, dropped by the devil. Grow up. And nearly 80% of what she says is bull, because the story changes all the time to fit the current conversion. Story 22. Complains about everything. The computer's crap, the weather's crayo, her thumb hurts, she's cold, management are never around, there's too much to do, she's hot, management are here, there's nothing to do. Story 23. They're all from India, so in the winter the heating's on, full ducking blast. In the summer the heating's on full ducking blast. And they still say it's ducking cold. I'm Irish. If it's not raining and cold, it's the ducking summer. Story 24. Be lazy. I can't stand it. I work in healthcare, and the amount of stuff that gets passed to the next shift to deal with at times is ridiculous. Like, yes, your patient has to get an enema. Go deal with it and get it done. It's gonna suck, but whatever. Also, caring about working holidays. I keep meeting new nurses who are shocked they might have to work Christmas. What did you think, the hospital has holidays hours and we just shut down for Christmas when you went to school? Story 25. Whistles. Whistles the same exact song every hour, makes fun of customers when they leave, makes the same joke to every customer, which I hear every single time, makes fun of our coworkers, listens to what I'm saying on the phone, then yells to me with comments about what I'm saying or what he thinks the customer is saying on the other line. Pretends he's too busy to answer the phone, so he makes me answer it for him. That's all from just one coworker, by the way. I have a lot. There's a guy who comes in my building and stares at me, or my only other female coworker. There's another one who stands next to me on his lunch break and eats with his mouth open and his lips smacking. And another who is a know-it-all and treats me like I don't understand anything that I'm talking about. I could go on. Story 26. I had a coworker I called the shop vac because he was the loudest eater I've ever experienced. He sat directly in front of me, facing each other, which made it worse. He would sack lunch, which I dubbed his pre-lunch, because he would eat it around 10 a.m., 2 hours after arriving to work. The amount of food he had in the lunch bag was astounding. Multiple sandwiches, bags of chips, and the worst were apples. The sound of him slurping up the juice is unforgettable. Usually I can hear people eat, and I don't mind because sometimes you can't help it and it's normal. This guy was different. He would make the most primal, guttural noises as though his entire body had to slurp or groan when he ate. To be honest, it would sometimes sound like it was pleasure because of the way he moaned as he ate. But like I said, that was his pre-lunch. So every day he would get in his car and drive to various fast food locations and get the equivalent to supersize. I'm going to stop there because thinking about his eating is making me mad. He weighed a good 350 pounds and smoked like a chimney. I have since moved states and jobs, but that was 2 years ago, and I'm shocked I haven't heard of his death yet. He was a very unhealthy man. Story 27. My cube mate left for another job in the middle of a high workload time, leaving me to do a 2-person job alone. I thought I managed well, since all he did was royally screw up everything anyway, and I'd always have to recheck his work for grammatical errors. While it was stressful and busy being the single point of contact for my department, I actually enjoyed it because I'm an efficient worker and had more time to focus on organizing everything for execution. I made progress on all the things he started but never finished before he left. Cut to a month ago. Dude is dissatisfied with his new job and wants his previous position back. Since we hadn't been able to fill the slot, corporate okayed his return. Now I'm stuck with the same inept cube mate who is technically my supervisor, even though I have more experience in the job area than he does. He's back to being a desk drummer and constant interruption to my workflow, and I'm back to managing my stress-induced rage with angry music. I'll probably go back to lifting weights as well, since that was a good way for me to channel my desire to strangle him on a daily basis. Story 28. There's this woman that sits across the room from me, and she does not stop singing all the time. And it's not even quiet. She belts it out as loud as she pleases. She'll also hear adverts on the radio and mimic noises from them, like car horns going off or something. Not only that, but she's the single most annoying person I've ever met. She never stops bullcrafting and talking about her ducking dog. Worst of all, anytime she's not singing, she sits on the phone all day calling her best friends. She's so ducking irritating to be in the same room as. She makes my blood boil. Story 29. I have this one coworker. She does this thing where she will say something completely out of context in order to get people talking to her. I feel bad because she doesn't seem to have the capacity to start conversation normally. For example, she will mumble something that no one can hear, and then someone asks her what she said. More often than not, we don't respond. And she'll say, "Did you hear what I said?" To which we'll respond, "No." So she'll go on to explain what she said at length and why she said and what's happening next. Or she'll reference something from her own life and act surprised that none of us know what the duck she's talking about. For example, one day she came up to me and said, "I hate chalk." I stared at her for a moment before exasperatedly asking what she was talking about. And she says, "Oh, chalk is what I call antacids." It's highly frustrating. Story 30. Asking for my advice and doing the complete opposite him. Does the client fill out Form A or Form B? Me. Form A because insert reasons and correct policy. Him. I think it's Form B. I'll give him that one. Me. No, that's incorrect. As I've said, you need Form A. Him. I'm going to use Form B. Walks away. Of course, the whole situation gets ducked up. Usually involves me being dragged into it for it to be rectified. When I advise management, they just shake their heads and mutter something about training. Here's an idea. Sack the, I don't respond to him anymore when he asks for my advice, which he just ignores anyway. There's a limit to my helpfulness. Story 31. I work in a small office with about 8 people, and one guy never works a full week. He is consistently late in the morning by about 5 to 10 minutes, consistently late coming back from lunch by 5 to 10 minutes, and often leaves early to get to his tax appointments he does on the side. Most of the time, he dips out of work to get to one of his kids' school assemblies because they're receiving a perfect attendance award or something. The guy is a great father, but he uses anything he can to get out of work. He will roam the building talking to people for most of the day. Then, the last hour of work, he'll complain about how behind he is. They will never fire him or discipline him because he's been getting away with it for 15 years. Everyone else always makes passive-aggressive remarks to him about all of this, but he just doesn't get it. Story 32. Here goes. The coworker who always has a story about some monumental injustice that happened to them the day before, where they suddenly turn into the ducking macho man or whatever, and verbally slam dunk someone. Every day, Denise. I was a bouncer at a bar once, and I have maybe 4 stories about verbally meting out justice. You did not tell the doctor to duck off. You did not crank your neck and snap your ducking sausage fingers at the McDonald's lady. You did not tell the car salesman crap, Denise. Your daycare provider is right about your children, Denise, and you ducking know it. Shut up. I'm going to super glue your mouse to the desk, Denise. This is why people piss in coffee pots, Denise. This is how you get ants. Story 33. Eats from the never-ending bag of the crunchiest Fritos on earth that are also stored in the loudest bag on earth. It takes 3 seconds of fumbling around in the bag, making more noise than a jet engine to find a single chip. Then he chomps on it loudly for another 3 seconds with occasional moaning noises, smacks his lips, licks his fingers, all of them. And then the process starts over again. Usually takes him 15 minutes to eat a small vending machine-sized bag, and I can hear every ducking moment of it. It drives me insane. It's loud enough that I can still hear it through headphones. I just take 15-minute walks now when I hear the bag open. Story 34. Stop sending ridiculous stories about your personal life when you aren't coming to work today. You sound like a kid making excuses for forgetting homework, working from home, taking a sick day, personal day, vacation day. I won't be in the office today. All perfectly acceptable. Story 35. I'm a student, but I hate it when they don't get up to blow their nose and choose to just sit there sniffling and sucking their snot back into their noses. Story 36. Have an actual discussion about whether something is feces or chocolate. Scene. Home care for disabled children. Coworker is doing a diaper change on a reusable towel. The towel may not have or may have been used. Coworker. Do you think this is chocolate? Me. Do I think that the brown spot on the cloth we use for changing children's diapers is chocolate? Coworker, because it is so dark and not this kid's normal color. Me. Allow me to reiterate. Pose question of chocolate or crap on actual changing towel. Coworker. I'm just asking because it's a very dark color and she has reasons, but need I continue? Story 37. Let's call him Chris. Chris is just unpleasant. He's the hipster type, Black frame glasses, bushy beard, vegan. But despite looking like he's 28, he's actually like 43. And he's a lil Karen. Just complains about people talking, has a goddamn meltdown when he's stressed out about a problem, responds to any sort of friendliness with disdain. Once I asked him if he wanted some coffee, since I was going anyway. He responded with, "No, and don't talk to me again. I'm busy." Okay, bud. Story 38. He has no social awareness. The type of guy that not only won't notice the subtle clues that everyone exhibits when trying to end conversation, by slowly backing up, positioning yourself partially behind a door frame, etc., but he will actually get up and follow you through doors as you're closing them behind you. He has problems with his lower back, and I catch him repeating the same conversation to a couple dozen people a day. Lower back pain, sciatic nerve, subside. Ugh, I would swear the guy is autistic, but I don't know how you make it well into your 50s without a diagnosis. Story 39. People who see you making a mistake and go to the higher-ups instead of helping you correct it. I'm talking about simple mistakes, not company-shattering ones. Story 40. Ask me questions that I couldn't possibly know the answer to. And then when I say, "I don't know, call the help desk," they get all pissed that I won't look it up for them. It's not my job to figure out how to solve your problems. Story 41. I have an older coworker who just shouldn't be there. When she works, she doesn't really do anything. Also, the only way she will work is if we have a sale going on. Most of the time, she'll call and say she can't make it. But if a sale is mentioned, she'll agree to work. Story 42. Talks whenever she wants, aka interrupts. I'll be chatting with another coworker and she'll start talking over me. Once, just to see if I could get her to realize how rude she was being, I kept talking even though she interrupted me. I think she's aware, but just doesn't care because she raised her voice to be heard over mine. Kept staring at each other as we talked at the same time. Finally, she was like, "Do you mind? I'm trying to tell coworker's name here. Something." I wanted to ducking punch her. Story 43. We can't leave until we as a team finish closing stuff down. She'll disappear for 10 minutes at a time without explanation, leaving 1 or 2 other people to do closing duties in the restaurant. She'll come back and say, "Ugh, I want to go home." No ducking crap. We all do. Now I'll do some work so we can GTFO. Yes, I've said as much to her. She's always not feeling good or upset about a personal reason that I don't want to ask about. Be a grown-up or find a different job. Story 44. Smack on their food very loudly. I shouldn't be able to hear you chewing on chicken as I approach the lunchroom. Have no concept of a line when waiting for microwaves. Oh, the microwave just beeped and I just walked into the lunchroom. Let me take that person's food out and put mine right in, even though I see 3 or 4 people standing in the area waiting. And on one occasion, taking my ducking food out of the microwave before it even finished cooking to put theirs in. Story 45. Shows up late every day. Also asks me the same questions about the same work-related thing every day, despite having notes and having to do it as a job. I hate it. Story 46. I'm a hostess, and the waiters always come up to us and harass us to seat them next and make up some bullcrap excuse as to why they should be, when the rotation is designed so everyone is equal. I always get crap like, "That table only tipped me 10%. And crap, I'm sorry, but every other table does not tip you 10%. And if they do, you're a crafty waiter. I know how to do my job. Story 47. My wife is a ducking awesome cook and makes my lunch every day. And every ducking day, my coworkers surround me like a pack of wolves and comment on what she packed and caring about their wives. It's so irritating and makes eating an otherwise awesome lunch kind of a buzzkill. And before you ask, I can't leave for lunch. I'm stuck with these idiots all day long. Story 48. I have a coworker that will take a hard candy from the bowl and slurp loudly on it for 10 minutes. I had no idea there was a way to eat hard candy that loudly. It sounds like a beagle eating Jell-O. It fills me with rage. Story 49. Always asks if I can cover her shifts, but when I ask if she can cover mine, she doesn't respond till like the day of and always has some excuse, and it's on Facebook Messenger, so I see when she sees my message. Story 50. Claims that we don't understand all the work she puts in. No, Karen, you haven't put in any work at all, and I have to work twice as hard on my shifts to make up for your failures. It's not a misunderstanding, and you're never going to get promoted to corporate without a strong work ethic. Managers of Reddit. What's something your employees just don't seem to understand? Story 1. Scheduling is a Karen. Seriously, I'll bend over backwards to make sure this thing works for both of us, because I understand you have another job, extracurriculars, a life outside of work, etc. Please don't do crap like make a bunch of plans inside your availability and call me 30 minutes into your shift to lie to me and tell me you're sick and not coming in. Story 2. I would be okay if you just said, "Hey, I didn't finish the project on time because I gave you an ambitious estimate and I misjudged how quickly I could get it done." If you do that, we'll get you help. If I can't help you get it done, we'll get a coworker to help you. We'll get it done. But I can't help you if you try to act like you don't need help and then try to lie about it to the end. Poor task management, deadline management is okay on the rare occasion. It's fine, we all have been there. But poor communication is not acceptable. Not when I have to communicate upstream to the VP who communicates to the CEO. If you bullcrap me, then I can't help you. Especially with younger engineers, we didn't hire you because we thought you were going to know everything. We hired you because we thought we could teach you everything you would need to know, and the damage done by your occasional duck-ups would be outweighed by your contribution. We know that occasionally you're going to think a project will take 12 hours, and it takes 36. I'm not some jackass who's going to bark at his programmers when I don't know how to code. I'll stay up with you and build it with you, and if I don't know a technology or framework, I'll learn it or connect you with someone in the company who can help you. But for duck's sake, don't try to bullcrap around the fact that you're having problems and make it seem like you don't need help, and then make up bees explaining why you have a steaming pile of crap to show close to the deadline. Like, this is how you train me to become a micromanager. I'm not saying all managers are like me. I'm not saying this strategy is the dominant strategy for all lines of work. I'm saying that this is true of me and my employees. I understand other managers are idiots, and it's better to just obfuscate and BS, blame shift, and bullcrap to avoid the blame being pinned on you. And I understand many crafty companies put their workers into catch-22s where they are forced into dishonest, shifty options in order to avoid negative scrutiny. My point is that if you do have a healthy company culture and a fair boss who will go through the trenches with you, then you are in a situation where it's better to communicate honestly, receive help, and own up to mistakes. Story 3. I have been a manager in several companies and I run my own now. Good employees basically show up on time, do the job that's expected, go home. It really is that simple. And it's incredibly hard to find people who do that. Your job might suck, but mine probably does too. If I have 30 employees, 95% of them complain about everything. 5% of them never complain and do more work than anybody else. They also get preference on days off, get more information on what's happening in the company, and have way more job security. Way more. Everything that you think matters on your job probably doesn't. Basically, the company needs to make money, and they hired you to help them make money. A lot of things that happen on the job you never know about and would stress you the duck out if you did. I've had times where I had corporate management hounding me to lay off 20% of my staff, 15 people. I'd argue with them for days on end, fighting not to lay off anyone. Finally, I had to concede to lay off at least 2 people. My head was pounding from arguing and the stress of having to decide which employees to let go, even though I already had an idea. After I got off of the phone, one of the soon-to-be layoff employees barged into my office, plunked down, and went on a 20-minute complain session about how other employees were parking where she liked to park. No, really. I was about to lay her off the next day, and she was griping about having to walk an extra 10 feet every day. Trust me when I say, you, as an employee, have no idea what else is going on in the company. Managing employees is that absolute hardest part of being a manager. If you are easy to work with and get things done, a good manager will always see you as an asset. Many managers are lazy and terrible, just like all of your non-manager coworkers. Most of them hate any type of confrontation. You know that coworker who needs to be fired, but you can't figure out why they aren't. Pretty sure bet it's because the manager doesn't want to deal with it. I don't have a problem firing people, because keeping bad people on staff punishes the good people who have to pick up the slack. Fire the bad employees and let the good employees have it a lot easier. I don't fire all willy-nilly, but everyone knows who needs to be fired. You are never as valuable to the company as you think you are. Trust me, and I'm not either. Other managers are constantly trying to blame you, the manager, or more specifically, one of your employees for something in an attempt to either do work themselves or cover up something they botched. A good manager spends the majority of their day managing their whiny employees and trying to keep other managers from getting their whiny employees fired for things they never did. In a big company, there are ruthless numbers and data that has to be met on the daily, quarterly. It can change on a dime. If you are high up enough in the company, your neck is on the line a lot. And every time you come back from a knockdown, drag-out meeting, there will be one employee who delivered what you promised the company your team could do, and the rest of your employees will have done nothing and all need deadline extension. If you feel like you do good work and the company knows it, you have a good manager. If you feel like you work hard and nobody other than your manager asks you about deadlines, you have a good manager. There's a lot of work that goes on keeping employees free from having 100 different bosses. The bottom line is everything. For me, for you, for the company, companies need to make a profit. If you do what's asked of you and you can figure out how to help the company make a profit, usually all these takes is by committing to producing work that makes the company competitive with anyone in the world, you will get things much easier. If you don't, find another company. I could go on about this forever. I should mention that in my own company, I pay above average market rates, work hard to have a good working environment, and I have very little turnover. Story 4. Backstory. I was the associate manager at an automotive body shop when I was 19, youngest kid there, though more mature to say the least. Learned things fast, was the last person to say no to any job, so I moved up and worked with distributing workflow, managing sales, and being first in touch with customers. Business gets busy and I tell the guys there's quite a few cars that need to be finished today. I'll run them back and forth to the dealerships and to make up for the extra work. I'll treat everyone to lunch tomorrow. Everything gets done fine. I buy the guys lunch and out comes the beer someone else brought. We can't drink beer on our lunch. We had a guy that was immature for his age. The way he talked and kept himself gave us reason to keep him in the back of the shop at all times. Being human, I know you need a day off here and there to tend to life. This idiot takes a week off work without giving anyone notice. Nobody knew where he was. We figured in jail and he shows up the last Friday of the month to pick up his paycheck. Why didn't you show up this week? I went to Mexico with my son. You could have given us heads up. We figured you were in jail. Haha, I thought if I told you, you wouldn't give me the time off. Yeah, you're fired, buddy. At 45 years old, you still can't communicate simple things. Occasionally, we worked on cars that were worth about as much as a house. Guys there, which was typical, but one guy, we'll name him Matt, became possessive over cars in the shop. Meaning Matt was the honorary driver, mover, detailer. Any reason he had to sit in this car and look like he owned it, mind you, in dirty work attire, he would relish. Every night before closing, I'd go over all the cars in the shop, make sure they're progressing as they should, and take my notes. Well, this one car was missing. Our shop was fairly large, and so I figured the car was finished early and someone delivered it or picked it up. No big deal. Later that night, I'm browsing Facebook and I see Matt is out and about having a good time in this customer's car. Matt took the car home and then out on the town. He didn't have permission to take the car. He's not insured under our policy for driving vehicles off our property. He's not allowed to smoke in the shop or any of the cars. In one picture, I see him driving, smoking, speeding. I call my boss and we pick the car up at his house. His whole family is there, watching what's happening. We let him know he's being let go of and explain why. His mom starts crying. His wife starts to beg us not let him go and brings the kids out. His brothers are speechless and look like they're about to kick out asses. And I'm here trying to explain to him what he did would have ruined the business if anyone found out. Needless to say, I had to explain to the customer what happened, and we didn't charge him a dime. He was cool and just asked we fix another problem car of his, and we called it even. He was still a paying customer when I left. Story 5, in no particular order, I work in casinos for a living. 1. Our busiest times of the year are holidays, weekends, and holidays that fall on weekends. If you can find a way to staff every position and honor all of the vacation requests, be my guest. 2. I have a strict guideline from HR as it involves raises. A certain appraisal score, 3% raise, and so on. I don't have the power to give you a 25% raise because you're having a tough time of it. Same goes for trying to negotiate health insurance, amount of time off per year, etc. 3. You are worth what someone will pay you. I don't care that 2 jobs ago you made a lot more. There's probably a good reason you aren't at that job anymore, typically because they laid off lots of overpaid workers. 4. Yes, I hire people with college degrees for positions that don't require one. Why? Because America has developed an infatuation with going to college, and now we are saturated with people with degrees. So why wouldn't I hire someone with a degree for an entry-level job versus someone without, all else being equal? I didn't have a degree when I started 20 years ago and started in an entry-level position. And I get that it must suck, but we've upped the ante as a society. For the record, I went back and got my bachelor's and master's at night. Understand that for virtually every position I hire for that, I get 200, 300 resumes. I'm sorry that I don't have time to write a detailed rejection letter. And if you're trying to relocate, if it's not for a senior manager position, you should generally try to put a local address on your resume, or else it's likely to go in the trash. I just don't have the time to coordinate an out-of-town candidate for a position that pays $30 a year when there are 100 local candidates. Sometimes if I don't give your department a lot of attention, that it's actually a really good thing. If everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I'm putting out fires in other departments, then it's good that I'm not spending a lot of time with you because if I was, that means you're the fire I'm putting out. 7. I don't change things just to change things. There's probably a method to the madness, especially since I'm a turnaround specialist and you aren't privy to the big picture. 8. We live in a party city that can eat you alive. I party, I party, but I duck and show up to work every day and get my crap done. I expect you to do the same and not get mad if I fire you for missing work because you got blackout drunk the night before and saw me out as well. I'm the guy who showed up to work the next day. 9. Unless your absence will cause the casino to have to close its doors, you are replaceable. Story 6. Half or more of my job is managing up. There is a cacophony of bullcrap constantly raining from the top of the company that would make my employees' lives miserable. This includes reductions in force, reduced hours, crazy schedule changes, pipe dream projects, pet projects, constantly shifting priorities, and worse. If you don't hear from me all day, it's not because I'm playing video games and chatting with friends in my office. It's because I'm desperately trying to keep you productive by holding the whack jobs at bay. I'm an engineering manager. I know that if engineers can't focus for an extended period of time on a single design or problem, nothing will get done. So shifting my people around to match the VP's daily whims hurts everyone, but I can't ignore him. He's responsible for directing our efforts. So I have to hear what's being asked for, decipher motivation, assign priority and likelihood that it'll ever come up again, prepare a narrative that acknowledges the importance of what he's saying, see if his desires align with our current goals, split resources where needed, evaluate what kind of hit other projects would take if we followed his path, and then deliver the good bad news in such a way that doesn't say you're dumb for asking. He's not. And doesn't say we are a bunch of incompetent fools here. We're not. Oh yeah, and the constant fight for raises. I got one of my guys a promotion, and that was a 9-month battle with the organization. Justifying need, showing the value of his new role, allocating funds. So sorry if I sometimes miss that detail in your data summary. I'll trust you to point it out if it's important. I want to be clear. It's not like I have a bad VP or something. Actually, he's unbelievably good at his job. Really cares about his employees, genuinely, maybe to a fault. Has tons of knowledge and experience in the industry. And he's very smart. It's just that he's under specific pressures. He might say, if we don't have product X out the door in 3 months, we're sunk in Q4. Who can you put on this project? He might be 100% correct. It's my job to know, 1, is it even possible to solve his problem? Or do we brace for impact? Do we have the resources to solve it? If we do have resources, who is the correct person? I never tell him in the moment who will work on it so they don't get bugged by the VP directly. And 4, if we don't have the resources, is it because we are understaffed, underskilled, or simply don't have any schedule slack? His job is to push. My job is to absorb that push and turn it into useful information that my employees can act on. I can only guess that at one level higher, his push is just an absorbed punch. Story 7. When they're on Facebook or browsing the web. The natural reaction to someone approaching your desk is not a furious flurry of clicking and your eyes bulging. To clarify, I do agree with the majority. If you're getting your work done and aren't on obvious NSFW sites, I'm not going to give you a hard time about it. It's more entertaining to watch the panic. Story 8. I'm not your friend. I'm your boss. I smoke too, but I don't want to hear you talking about it at work, especially to me. And I don't need to know how trashed you got on your days off. Do your ducking job. I am perfectly okay with my employees smoking weed. Smoke before work for all I care, as long as the job gets done. I am a very friendly person and I generally get along very well with my employees. That being said, there's a time for being chummy and there is a time when you should be working. If you are supposed to be getting your meese set up for the night, don't spend 20 minutes trying to tell me about the night you had. Save that crap for after work. Story 9. Why is it such a big deal to show up on time? Because if you aren't here by 8, I have to find someone to cover your shift. When you show up at 8:07, I have been on the phone trying to get crap covered while you were waiting in drive-thru at McDonald's. Story 10. If a customer asks you a question and you don't know the answer, it is okay to admit you don't know. Please do not just make crap up on the spot that sounds about right. Story 11. I keep a file with the stupid stuff you do, including the reasons you call out. I don't enjoy getting people in trouble or firing them, usually. But if I do have to write you up or let you go, you're not getting out of it. I have at least 1, often 2, documented instances of where I already told you that you messed up and what would happen if you didn't stop. I typically also have a documented instance where I told that by company policy, you should already be on a written warning. But I was going to give you one last chance. Yet somehow, 99% of the time, employees act like this is the first time they're hearing about anything being wrong. This typically ends right about when I pull out 30 pages of our previous conversations and other documentation. On a separate note, no, I don't care that you have kids. I didn't knock you up, and neither did any of your coworkers. You aren't constantly getting a special schedule just because you have a kid. Graduation, concerts, birthdays, I'll do my best to get you your one-off days, but I can't make you the only person who never has to close because your 14-year-old is too stupid to handle getting in bed on their own. No, you aren't owed a promotion just for showing up and not being a terrible worker. I'm not going to make you a manager just because you've shown up to most of your shifts and half-assed it. Keep in mind that I'm not talking about a job where a suckered teenager gets an extra $0.25 per hour to do way more work. These guys expect a promotion that gets them an extra $14,000 a year just for showing up. Perhaps most entertainingly for me, I get reports of the stupid crap you do when I'm off in front of my managers, often with photo evidence. You can't screw around just because I'm not physically next to you. Story 12. If you volunteer to go home early every time I ask everyone, you will not have worked as many hours as the schedule states. I'm not stealing from your paycheck. You clocked out 2 hours early, 4 days out of the week. I wouldn't send you home if you didn't volunteer. If you're doing a decent job that day, I won't ask you to leave. Also, just show up. We work in fast food. There is not an easier job. If you want money, all you have to do is stand there and stack meat and bread. I don't understand someone that comes in, submits an application, interviews, fills out paperwork, communicates availability and first day stuff, then just never shows up again, or spends one day working, then bails. Finally, quit forgetting to sign up for college classes or skipping class. No one wants to make sandwiches every day forever, go to college or trade school or whatever. I get it, some people really are just made for the fast food life, but the number of reasonably bright people I've worked with that just went on to do nothing is really disappointing. After a few years of working with them and talking about future plans, I left for school. Every time I came back, I'd ask what they were doing there, and it was always the same excuses. This specific restaurant does not require late nights and was not excessively busy. Regardless, there are emotional and mental stressors, but I don't know another common job that has less stress. Physically, the job doesn't require a lot, and the work itself does not require a lot of thought. I'm sure there are a lot of fast food jobs that can be very demanding though. Story 13. Just because you can't see the reason we have to do something doesn't mean that there is no reason. Most rules we have are in place for a reason. If you can't figure out the reason why, that doesn't mean that there is no reason. We have bosses too, and sometimes things happen that means we all need to work a little harder for a while. It's not like I thought to myself one morning, let's see how I can make my employees hate me today. Making schedules is a pain in the ass. X amounts of workers doesn't like this or that, and the other part doesn't like that or the other, and people have decided to take a few days off. Some people have to leave early on Tuesdays or Thursdays because kids, and I have to make sure you still get to work the full amount of hours you are entitled to. It's impossible to make everyone happy if you want it done. Another way, please come in with a schedule ready that everyone agrees to. If there's a job I've asked you to do, just tell me if you couldn't do it. I don't care very much about why. I just need to know. Don't spend hours or days making up an excuse, just tell me. Not mentioning it altogether is not a good plan either. It will come up. Our job as a manager is mostly to make sure that all the teams work together as one. It might happen that a team misses something, which means that we must do it. Why can't they do it? Is something I don't know nor care very much about. It's just a job that needs doing. Story 14. When you talk to me or call me the day before, it may snow and say that you're concerned about the weather tomorrow. I already know you're going to call off. Big or certain snow events are one thing, but I'm talking about flurries in the forecast or a chance of snow. Probably a 95% call-off rate when you pull me aside to tell me that you're concerned the day before on a potential snow day. Yes, there can be concerns with kids having to be home from school, but this isn't these people, and that's a reasonable issue. It's always people who are already marginal employees that are doing this and are looking for a day off. They are setting me up today to try to accept their excuse tomorrow. They wrinkle their nose or visibly scowl when I suggest that they make sure they aren't parking on their hilly driveway, or offer them winter advice, since I lived in Chicago for years, or offer to pick them up in the morning, or if they're so concerned, my company is willing to put them up in a motel right down the street, because it's that important to have staff into work. Yes, we live in the American South where snow is rare. Yes, there is a societal expectation around here that everything stops when it snows, which is stupid. And yes, you may not want to drive full speed on the interstate in your Mustang. But when there is literally zero snow on the ground and you call off 30 minutes before your shift because you have tried nothing and somehow it isn't working, I'm in a bind. Expect to be written up for a late call. And my degree is in meteorology. I know how much it snowed right where you live in the suburbs, country, mountain. I know if it could be reasonably different than where I live, the office. And I adjust my expectations accordingly. Story 15, how to read a schedule and show up to work on time for their scheduled shifts. We have a pretty good bunch of people right now, but we've had people in the past who pulled multiple no-call, no-shows despite wiring down their schedule for the week multiple times. I am your manager, not your babysitter. It's your job to arrive at work on time for your scheduled shift. It's not my job to call and remind you when you don't show up. Don't be mad when you come in an hour late and get sent home because I found coverage for your shift when you didn't even call to tell me you were going to be late. How to glean basic information from your surrounding. Every single time the next week's schedule is posted, someone will look at it and go, is this next week's schedule? Gee, I don't know, maybe try looking at the dates on the schedule. The reason you don't have more hours is because every time we've tried to give you more hours, you've called out of half your shifts and tried to switch the other half at the last minute. Look, nobody loves working here. But if you wish to end your employment with us, freaking do it the right way. Give us 2 weeks notice so we can start looking for someone to replace you. Don't just stop showing up. Don't walk out in the middle of your shift. Don't hand your keys in 2 hours before your shift is supposed to start. It's hard enough to find a job nowadays. You do not want to burn bridges with any employer. Story 16. If you don't understand or know how to do something, ask me. If you don't agree with something, tell me. Freaking talk to me. I'm not going to get mad. If you ask someone else how to do it or just try to figure it out on your own and screw it up, I will lose confidence in you. If you go around complaining to your coworkers all the time, but tell me that everything is great, you can GTFO. Story 17. If you're sick, call out. That's what sick time is for. Don't come in dragging your feet, complaining about how sick you are until I send you home. This is not the sign of a devoted worker, but rather an actor who must be seen to be believed. If you call out sick, especially the day after a holiday, don't start with, well, I requested the day off and it wasn't approved, and I have family flying in. Also, I'm dealing with stomach issues. I know you're bullcrafting to extend your holiday, and you will come back to work with a write-up waiting for you. If you have to push an order forward, duck and call the customer to let them know. Don't just expect them to be happy to give us another hour after they took the time to drive all the way here. If a customer is asking you to hurt yourself by lifting something too heavy, stand strong and say no. Be polite, but if they refuse to acknowledge your predicament, politely ask them to leave. If a manager isn't present and they refuse to leave, let them know you're calling the cops and do so. Don't break your back in an attempt to not escalate the situation and then call out the next day because your back is now broken. If you're ducking up an order royally, don't wait until it's due to ask for help. Standing around doing nothing? I notice. There's always something to do when customers aren't around. Clean, stock retail, do something. I really don't want to have to constantly tell you to do your job. Story 18. That management gets breaks too, just like everyone else. I work in a busy fast food chain where we are often understaffed due to us being a smaller store. Where I live, you cannot work more than 5 hours without a half-hour break, and managers are paid for their breaks. All the employees care about is when they get theirs because they've been on for 3 hours and their feet hurt and they want something to eat. But I've been working for 6.5 hours and haven't even counted a till yet, which 9-10 times is my break. And when you tell them you're just gonna grab something to eat quick before they go on break, they act like you just shot their dog because managers don't need to eat either, right? They don't understand that 9-10 times I have to manually punch in my break so that we don't get I'm trouble from the labor board and go 8.59 hours without eating. Also that managers have administration stuff to do. I'm responsible for managing the food cost at my location, which is about $30,000, $40,000 a month in cost to the owner who expects me to produce reports daily, etc. Things that require me to be on the computer off the floor. You have 2 customers and there's 3 of you. There's no need to call me up to help you. If you all try real hard, I'm sure you can do it. I was you too once, except I was expected to do it by myself. Rant over. Story 19. Sometimes we are just as mad as you are, and it's impossible to please everyone. I was a manager for a retail store, and the company decided to open Thanksgiving for the first time ever. This sucks. I was so mad. That is my favorite holiday. People flipped crap on me. First off, I automatically have no chance of having it off because never in a million years would I not work that day while others have too. My Thanksgiving is ruined too. Once I saw no one had any vacations put in centered around that day, I first asked for volunteers and then I literally just picked names out of a hat. What a nightmare. Everyone has a reason they have to be off. So-and-so has kids. So-and-so is going to college. And this is their last Thanksgiving home. So-and-so's great aunt is in town. Look at this ducking blows and I'm so sorry, but I have no choice. So I did it randomly. That was a rant. We are people too. Half the time we agree with you, but what choice do we have? Story 20. Not a manager, but his assistant. He is working his ducking ass off. I know it's easy to assume that a manager is a rich piece of crap who only got to his position because of ass-kissing and conniver. When he comes in at 9 a.m., it's not because he's a lazy duck who enjoys sleeping. It's because he left the office at 7 p.m. yesterday and was gone on a business trip for 2 days before that, and he needed to have breakfast with his wife after he helped her get the kids ready for school. He is very concerned about his employees keeping his job. This is his number 2 priority. His number 1 being closely linked to that, keeping the company in business, ideally successful. We are barely escaping the startup phase after about 5 years, and many people worked really hard to achieve that. But for some, it's too much to ask that a short-term client request, which could get us lots of money for relatively little work, has to be handled quickly and might mean that a few people stay in for 1H longer for 3 days in a row. He is not some weird, distant bossman, and you can talk to him and say, sorry, I really feel overwhelmed lately. And he will either get someone to help you out or see that your workload is reduced in some other way. Story 21. Don't assume everyone followed the same path. Some of us worked very, very hard for what we have. This leads up to something my employees don't understand, but learn quickly. Never assume your boss is an idiot or doesn't know your job. I worked full-time in a call center while going to school full-time. It was a beating, and for 3 years I hardly saw my wife, but I made it work. In that time, I got my CCNA and got a job in our no working overnights. Finished my degree and became an engineer, worked my way up from there and became a supervisor. Continued to study, got a few more certs as a supervisor, and became a manager. Worked a lot of overtime, fixing all of the things I'd seen that were broken that I didn't have the power to fix until now. Became a director, busted my ass, unifying and building up several teams simultaneously while maintaining those certifications and industry skills. When a VP position opened up, I was the best choice because I made sure I met and exceeded every qualification. When I come to you and ask for a reason why something is broken, continues to break, or how it might be better, realize I may know the answer. I'm just hoping you'll walk the path with me and find the solution yourself. Story 22. I'm not trying to steal your money. Tips. I make the schedule as business requires. I get none of the tip money at all, ever. If you get a second job, I understand that your hours need to change. However, this doesn't mean I'm required to give you a couple of 2-hour shifts so you can continue to have part-time status. If I can work with you, I will, but if it's too difficult, then it's not my problem. I don't need you to like me. I'd like it if everyone liked me, but I would still be here doing the job if you all hated me. Story 23. We're people too. We have lives away from work that might affect us from time to time. I got here by working my tail off. I know what it takes to put out 100% the whole time, and no, I don't expect it always. Sometimes we just need a few minutes alone. Sometimes non-physical work can be more taxing on a person than physical work. Don't assume we aren't doing anything. Don't say I don't care. Call me whatever behind my back, but don't accuse me of not caring. I want to see you succeed. It's best for you and I if you do. Story 24. I was an AM who did hiring for a retail store. The absolute biggest thing was kids and their parents not understanding. Okay, look, our applicant base was 2 distinct groups. Teenagers looking for a first job. Women 60 plus who'd retired from professional careers. To me, the teenagers should be getting these jobs. They're getting to the point where socially they need disposable income, and their parents are likely hounding them because they don't realize how application processes and getting low-wage jobs works today. The problem was availability. It made me sad, but I couldn't do anything about it. Old people don't have school 7 a.m., 3 p.m. They're more than happy to be at the store, stocking at 5 in the morning. Their evenings aren't filled up with extracurriculars that they're told they need in order to be successful in life, and they normally aren't doing social things on the weekends. So, to teenagers who get turned down for first jobs, it's probably due to availability, and it probably isn't necessarily your fault. From one of the people who had to turn you down, I'm sorry. Story 25. Construction industry here. When I give you a 3-week project and I hear nothing from you in the first week, I'm going to assume you have it under control. If I hear from you in the second week and you are 4 days behind, there's going to be a problem. Communicate with me. I won't get angry with you if you are behind schedule or over budget because you didn't anticipate the massive mold problem. I bid the job and I missed that too. It happens on almost every remodel and we plan for it to a degree. Let's solve the problem together. Also, I expect 8 hours of work from you each day. Some of that time includes supply runs. It does not include ducking off in your truck for 2 hours because you think nobody will notice. I do notice, and I know how much work should be done in 8 hours. Story 26. Recently, a staff member asked me why they do not receive a bonus for 100% attendance. As in, if you have no days off sick, you get a cash bonus. It took me 4 different ways to explain that the business pays them a salary to turn up to work and do a job. We pay them a bonus if they exceed our expectations or go above and beyond for a customer. There is literally no incentive for us to pay a further bonus just because they were good enough to show up and do the job that they're paid for. The staff member is one of those who will talk about they are underpaid for the work that they do, how they are paid below the market rate for this industry, how they could earn almost as much if they went to work in a coffee shop and did 1 extra shift per week, but never, ever leaves. Story 27. That a salaried job is not 9 to 5. There will be days you can take off early, that's okay. But the days you take off at 5, when we have to get something done before the next day, when you full well know the priority and importance, is not okay. Now, bad on me for not making sure we both had an overt agreement on the commitment. But I worked my ass off to get where I'm at by knowing my priorities and getting them done regardless of the hours it took me. And if you expect to get to where I'm at, which some do, I expect the same level of commitment. Oh, and I can do every job you're doing because I've done it and can do it. I'll roll up my sleeves and dive into any problem, but I expect you to learn and follow suit the next time. Story 28. I work at an office job just like you, and I know full well that everyone wants time off around Christmas, Thanksgiving, and New Year's. I get it. I want that time off too. But here's the thing, executive management wants the office open and a few people need to be here. Sorry, I don't have the power to close the office myself and nothing I schedule is going to satisfy everyone. So please don't A, send me your holiday vacation request in February hoping I'll approve you first and get indignant when I don't share your stellar foresight, or B, take no time off in the year hoping you'll be able to block off that entire period and feel betrayed when I can't accommodate because I somehow don't appreciate how hard you work and dedicated you are since you don't ask me for much. Yada yada. Story 29. Honestly, anything. We have foolproof checklists for every single aspect of the job. Even the complicated portions have their own checklists, so things are fully completed step by step. I still can't trust them to do everything correctly. Even sweeping the whole floor seems to be a battle of wits. The job isn't difficult, and I've had some great employees, but the recent batch has just been the most disappointing group of surprise stupid I've ever had to be in charge of. Did you email the me and the other person you have to email when you do that thing? Why not? I didn't realize I needed to. But it's on the checklist, and I trained you on how to do that. You checked it off the checklist too. Oh, I don't use the checklist. I know all the things. You clearly ducking don't.